$10 million a day. Hedge fund manager John Paulson did it by betting that the housing market would collapse. Indeed, it did. A new book, The Greatest Trade Ever, takes us behind the scenes of Paulson's multi-billion-dollar rise. Joining me now is Greg Zuckerman, the book's author and reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Greg, great of you to be here. This trade was well known, and the amount of money that Paulson and the firm made, billions of dollars, was well known. But what attracted it to you to write a book about it?
You know what, about a year or so ago, I realized that these were the winners. I knew there were going to be other books and other people kind of analyzing the people that lost, the AIGs, the cities of the world, people trying to fix this world, Bernanke and Geithner, that kind of thing. I think through the winners, and that includes John Paulson, but a few others who saw this coming, you can learn maybe more lessons from this whole bubble, how to prepare for the next one, that kind of thing. And I enjoy writing about winners more than losers anyway.
But Greg, winners, because he won and made billions of dollars essentially on the backs of people who made bad decisions with homes. And so what does it say really to people who are facing foreclosure, who are underwater on their homes?
Well, it tells you about risk. And he saw that they'd gotten into debt. He saw there were problems ahead, and he saw there was a bubble. And it's my kind of contention that we've had more financial bubbles in the last few years. If you think about it, you've had the energy markets, tech bubble, obviously, Asian currencies before that. Jeremy Grantham, an investor, counts about 25 financial bubbles over the past 80 years or so. And I think in some ways you can learn some lessons from Paulson and some others that you can figure these things out from the outside. Because Paulson wasn't a mortgage guy, he wasn't a housing guy, he wasn't a derivative guy, and yet he's the one that made the greatest trade ever.
Greg, you did some 50 hours of interviews with John Paulson, but he has since come out and said there are inaccuracies in the book. It fails to capture the essence of the credit bubble. He equates it with the writing style with a gossip tabloid. Your response to that?
Well, I spent over 50 hours, as you say, with John. He has yet to point out any inaccuracies to me. I think the way what happened was he has a colorful past, and he's a private guy now, and I'm not sure he wanted me to write about his colorful past, but in my view, John Paulson and the others who figured this thing out are interesting, and their personalities are interesting, and their motivations are interesting, and I had to get at that as a writer. I'm not sure he wanted me to get those kinds of themes.
You call him a womanizer before he was married?
He had a good time. He enjoyed himself, like a lot of single people, and now he's settled down.
But one interesting thing that you kind of go into in the book is it seemed fairly easy to identify. One analyst actually identified the problem in housing, Paolo Pellegrini, who you cover in the book. Easy to identify, difficult to execute this bet.
That's a really good point. There were a lot of people actually who saw this coming, who thought that housing actually was too high. I think now there's this conventional wisdom that everyone drank the Kool-Aid. I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of people thought housing at some point was going to drop, but they didn't take that next step to figure out how do you make money off of that. And we're talking about even the Bill Grosses of the world, Mike Vranos is a mortgage expert, Soros and Buffett. All those kinds of people didn't do what John Paulson and the other people I talk about in the book did.
But what Paulson and company did in order to make this bet that housing would collapse was controversial in and of itself, because he went to some firms and said, can you create these collateralized debt obligations so I can then turn around and essentially bet that they're going to collapse through insurance?
That's true. In 2006, he was buying insurance left and right. That's how he made all his money. Basically, these CDS contracts, they're called. They're basically derivatives that are insurance on risky mortgages. And he was buying a lot of it. He wanted even more of it. So he went to some of the banks and said, hey, if you create some of these CDO products filled with risky mortgages, I'll be able to bet against them. I would argue that it's the bank's responsibility. They're the ones who sold it to investors. John Paulson was just eager to buy more insurance, but there are some people that blame him for that.
Talk about, really quickly, Greg, he's bet on gold, right? If that goes badly, will that completely remove the reputation, certainly not the money maybe that he made on betting on housing?
Depends where gold goes. I don't think so. I mean, he's put about 15% of his portfolio in gold, which is a big bet because he manages about $30 billion now. So he's among the biggest buyers of gold out there. And there is criticism of him and those who buy gold. To some extent, it's a conventional wisdom that the fiat currencies, the dollar and other kind of U.S. and domestic and international currencies are going to have problems, and that gold is the answer. So you could argue that Paulson right now is doing the conventional bet, and he used to do the unconventional bet. I would argue that it's actually kind of smart to have some gold in your portfolio.
Greg, it was good to see you, Greg Zuckerman.
Great to be here.
The book is The Greatest Trade Ever. Ever, period. And Greg's also a Wall Street Journal reporter. Greg, it is a gripping read, and it's not just numbers. So